What started out as a simple restriction wound up spiraling into Bayonetta like you've never seen it before. Welcome to the Handgun Only Challenge Run. Bayonetta is a game with a large selection of uniquely satisfying weapons that mostly all get their own time in the sun, except for one, the handguns. These bad boys are what Bayo initially begins the game with, but quickly get swapped out for her iconic Scarborough Fair. Moveset-wise, the two pistols are identical, but the handguns do something very special. On top of just doing lower damage, I think, they prevent you from doing wicked weaves. Essentially, with every other weapon in the game, you get access to combo finishers in the form of wicked weaves. Massive attacks that do a lot of damage, greatly extend your range, and send enemies flying. But with the handguns equipped, you don't get any of that. So, can we beat non-stop infinite climax, the hardest difficulty, while exclusively using the handguns as our weapon of choice? Let's find out. Right away, I want to talk about the two accessories I'm rocking. Accessories are basically passives. You have limited slots for them and you have to pick and choose which ones you want. The first and most important one I'm using is the Moon of Mahakala. It allows me to parry enemy attacks with proper timing. A normal block will nullify any attack and send most foes reeling backward, while a perfectly timed block results in a small heal and a retaliatory headbutt that inflicts a lot of damage. Traditionally, this would also trigger Witch Time, a time slow that lets you act with impunity, which you can normally get from perfect dodging. However, in the difficulty we're playing on, Witch Time is completely disabled no matter what. Except in the case of some very rare scripted sections, but yeah, it's basically not a thing. The second accessory I have equipped allows me to restore a very small portion of health by taunting an enemy. Now, you might see this minuscule heal and think, Lucid, when a single attack hurts you for 12 times that amount, what's the point? And the point is that it's not about the size of your health bar, it's about how you use it. See, this game has a nifty feature called one-shot protection. No matter the damage of an attack, if you have any amount of green left on your bar, taking a hit will simply reduce you to 1 HP. Only while you're at 1 health can you actually be defeated. So as long as I could find time to get that little heal off, I could buy myself an extra hit each time I took one. Since we're on Infinite Climax, I'm going to be contending with a lot of the toughest enemies right out of the gate. My strategy for dealing with them was obviously torture attacks. These cinematic QuickTime events have you mash a button in exchange for absurd damage to any target of your choice. But the cost of entry is steep, 8 pips of magic or a full bar. The issue there is whenever you get hit, you lose 4 of those pips, and every single enemy on this difficulty throws out attacks at lightning quick speed, so taking it on the chin is a common occurrence. All that being said, the first mission wasn't too bad since, as I stated before, you usually start the prologue using the handguns anyway. After making it to Vigrid, I got stuck at this door puzzle. See, I had a key, but no matter how I thrusted the dang thing, it just wouldn't go. So I took a step back and went for a more smooth, gentle approach, and it slid right in. An encounter shortly after that puzzle pit me up against 2 Joys, who fight very similarly to Bayonetta herself. They love dodging around, so my strategy was to trap one in a corner and damage it enough until a torture attack could finish it off, and then the second Joy followed suit. Out in the courtyard, we were introduced to Big Guy with Axe, which is his official name. Trust me, I checked his birth certificate, and this is where things started to get weird. The fight itself was fine, but at the end you summon a demon to land a cinematic finish on him. But there was no demon. So Mr. Axe was just getting chomped up by thin air. Anyway, ignoring that, I learned something extremely important in this flashback sequence. The block from my accessory could deflect projectiles and send them back at the enemy. This dude was spitting fireballs, and each one I hit back at him did far more damage than my handguns were doing. There aren't too many ranged attacks I can use this tech on just yet, but there will be. Once you beat a mission, you get to play a little minigame called Angel Attack. This has nothing to do with the run. I honestly just wanted to flex and show you all how awesome I am at it. Once again, I got the invisible finisher glitch against the same enemy type in a different mission, so maybe it's just a glitch with that specific dude. Then after the city started burning thanks to global warming, I learned more about my projectile deflection. If I landed a perfect parry, the projectile would actually get destroyed. So in order to send it back, I had to specifically not go for perfect timings. Another thing I noticed is that when pressing the dedicated shoot button, the game actually swaps the model of the handguns into Scarborough Fair. I promise I was still exclusively using the handguns, so if you ever see Bayo holding the scars, it's just because I was pressing shoot, not because I swapped to them or anything. I call this little strategy walking the dogs. I don't know if they got brain damage from getting hit with a few cars or what, but this behavior seemed very odd to me. At the very least, one of them kicked its ass into gear once I got rid of his friend though. Upon escaping Texas in the summer, it was time to take on the first boss, the cardinal virtue of fortitude. For every one of these big boss chapters, Bayonetta is put into a special state that turns every single one of her attacks into a wicked weave. And that's exactly why none of my attacks were wicked weaves. Thanks, handguns. Since my damage was abhorrently low, I needed to look toward alternative solutions, and this boss just so happened to be the guy I learned about deflecting fireballs from in that flashback earlier. In fact, it turns out that sending enough fireballs at him puts him into a daze, allowing you to throw him around for some extra damage. Don't get me wrong, I had my fair share of game overs throughout this fight, but Bayonetta is merciful. There's a general rule that every time you do something to change the state of the fight, there's a checkpoint. So here, I tore off one of his heads, boom, that's a checkpoint. Second head gone, second checkpoint. It's like second dinner, but you don't get morbidly obese from it. The beginning of Chapter 5 thrusts you straight into an encounter where you have to fight 5 total Grace and Glory, 2 in the first wave, followed by 3 more altogether. This enemy is by far the deadliest angel in the game, in my opinion. It's swift, unpredictable, and even with one-shot protection, its attacks come out so fast that getting hit twice in rapid succession is more likely than not. In an equally as brutal gauntlet towards the end of the mission, you have to fight 3 joys at the same time. Not altogether too bad by itself, but right after you finish them off, a cutscene introduces these manta ray enemies, and this game has an obsession with attacking you immediately out of a cutscene. Even when I was ready for it and spamming dodge, I got clipped by the second one flying in. The capstone to it all was the first real fight against Jean. Side note, if you don't like my pronunciation of her name, it's not my fault. I have a disability known as being American. While this fight was not too difficult, it was a precursor for things to come. She loved using my own parry against me to stop my offense, and whenever I landed a perfect parry of my own, half the time the counterattack would just whiff. Because of that, this fight ended up feeling like an intense back and forth, with each witch struggling to get the upper hand against one another. The first encounter in the next area added burning enemies to the mix. You'd think that would be a good thing for me, but it was quite the opposite. If you try striking one of these foes, your attack bounces off and you take damage instead. You're meant to extinguish the flames with bullets first, but half of the enemies had shields. The ideal way of getting rid of those is with, you probably guessed it, wicked weaves. My only option was to parry attacks and damage their shields in the brief moment they they were exposed. But once the blockers were gone, these angels were insanely easy to keep trapped in a loop. If you mash the shoot button rather than hold it, you can fire bullets infinitely faster, allowing you to extinguish the fire before the enemy even finishes its animation of reapplying it. So when it is done, it'll go right back into stoking the embers again. In the same vein, mashing shoot will let you knock these serpents out of the sky nigh instantly. What it isn't supposed to do is break their AI to the point where they never attack you. I don't know what happened here. And here's another bug that I literally just noticed while editing. Massive Guy with Axe, brother to Big Guy with Axe, actually had his axe desync from him for a little bit. He turned and went in for a swing, all the while his axe just stayed floating in front of him. For the next boss battle against Temperance, the majority of the fight was relatively bog standard. However, for the last phase, because my damage was so low, I did start incorporating an unorthodox strategy. Anytime he used his weird branch tongue thing to grab me, I would let it happen. That's because once you break out, the boss stays on the ground for a decent damage opportunity, and it was also long enough time for me to perform a taunt in order to heal up for the next grab. He also did eye lasers that I could parry back, but I found those to be a little less consistent. And then there was Route 666. Upon simply starting the chapter, I was loaded in improperly and the game had to reset me back onto a truck as if I had already fallen off. But that was only the tip of the iceberg. Once I got to the infamous motorcycle section, everything started coming apart at the seams. I was just driving along the path until suddenly there was no more path. The road just ended. Not like an intentional end either. There is, in fact, supposed to be a road here, but there wasn't. No matter how many times I fell and drove back to this part, the road never appeared. I thought reloading from checkpoint could fix this, but there's no checkpoint button, so instead I had to lose all my health, which shouldn't be too hard considering I was taking a big chunk every time I fell to the bottom of the world. But even at 1 HP, falling off the track didn't give me a game over. Instead, I had to get hit by one of the angel cars on the road, a feat that I found out was much harder to do than you might expect. But after driving through the 9 circles of hell over and over again, it finally happened and we reloaded checkpoint, only to find the road was still not there. Well, on to the next chapter, I say. The mini-boss at the end of this mission was Ball. And at this point, I was struggling to discern if this was a bug or an actual strategy, but I found a safe spot right in front of this thing. Only one of the 3 attacks it will try doing can hit you, and you can easily parry it to maintain your position and shoot the core while it's whiffing its other moves. For the big finisher, we get to watch another glitched version of a cutscene where the ball looks more like it's being possessed than anything else. Now, here's something I'm pretty sure was just an oversight on the devs' part and not an actual glitch. You start this sequence on a central platform and 2 big guys with axes spawn to fight you. They can jump up to meet you on that platform, but they can't actually jump down off of it. So all I had to do was lure them up there, jump away, and the fight was totally free. The third virtue, Justice, is probably the most annoying of them all. His attacks are super fast, and he loved using his 2 seed vine things to sweep the arena. Fortunately, I found a neat, safe spot at the back left of the rock where the boss couldn't hit me, and the only time I had to move was when he started breaking the rock I was standing on. Otherwise, spamming shoot was enough to take this thing down. My next excursion took place on a cargo plane where I had to face the hardest encounters yet. First, I needed to take on 3 Gracious and Glorious, the harder version of Grace and Glory, and then with no checkpoint in between, I had to face off against 3 burning shield dudes. It was rough, but not nearly as bad as what was quietly waiting just ahead. The second fight against Jean is where the wheels really started to fall off. Everything seemed normal at first, all the way up until she brought out her motorcycle. At this point, I was dodging and blocking until suddenly she got stuck. On the wing of the plane, she started driving in place, unable to get over to me. So I paused the game to make a note of the timestamp in the recording so I could easily find find it while editing. But the second I tried to unpause, the game crashed. In my next attempt, I tried recreating the bug, leading Jean to various parts of the airship to get her stuck. This time around, she was able to follow me pretty well, even getting some sick airtime by ramping off this engine. After she flew past me with that maneuver, I sprinted across the map only to have her blink into existence right above me. That engine was interesting to me though, so I lured her back over to it and turned a 180 as soon as I knew she'd hit it. The result? One stuck Jean. My health was pretty low from all this testing, so I hung back and taunted my way up to full, and then I slowly approached to see just how our little friend got trapped. I did see her for a brief second, but the next thing I knew, there was a fist in my face and she was on the other side of the wing. The anomalies were piling up in full force and certainly not about to stop there. After I finished off the boss, I was thrust into an escort section where you have to carry the young Cereza away from the rising electric water. It's been a minute since I played, so I forgot how the sequence went and ultimately met a swift end at the very start of the section. When I restarted from checkpoint, it put me just after the small pool I had drowned in, but there was no girl to carry and no enemies to fight. In fact, there wasn't much going on at all. The water was rising, but it was really slow and an invisible wall barred my path forward. I was just gonna let the water take me, but I decided to hang out, inspect the arena, and see how high up the water would actually get. Once I was satisfied, I had the electricity drain my health, but not even restarting from checkpoint fixed the issue. So I rebooted the game altogether, and that did wind up properly spawning all the necessary triggers for me to proceed. Cool, I thought. No more bugs. Oh, you sweet summer child. Shortly after beating up these first few enemies, the sound completely cut out, and it was almost immediately followed by this. Now, if I had sound, I might have been able to do something here, but with neither sight nor vision, I legitimately just had to let this run its course. On the next attempt, the game was gracious enough to let me keep both my audio and video, but in exchange, my hubris in trying to skip an extremely short cutscene was met with an infinite loading bar that subsequently crashed the game. Get me out of this mission! Against the last of the virtues, your moveset becomes slightly restricted because the fight takes place on the ocean, so Bayonetta is surfing on a piece of metal. You're supposed to start by destroying the faces on each of its 4 legs, and with wicked weaves at your disposal, that's no problem, but without those hairy helpers, I was struggling to discern how I was gonna reach the heads at all. And then they showed me. In a glorious twist, they shoot fireballs, which means I could deflect fireballs. What's more, the boss himself shoots fireballs. So in his final phase, if you stay at a range just outside of his melee options, he will spam fireballs your way, and these meteors absolutely chunk his health bar. I only had to go through 2 sets of his annoying obstacle course before he finally put the nail in his own coffin. Note to the editor, we're not even gonna talk about the missile section. Just skip right over it. Just snip it right out. Like, I don't even want a second of that Mundus-ass section in my video. This battle was by far the hardest part of this entire challenge. Jeans has access to all of her wicked weaves. It feels like her moves come out 10 billion times faster than before, and her checkpoints are few and far between. Once you get her purple health bar down most of the way, the fight transitions to the side of a building. She throws a missile at you, which was basically free damage for me, but I still had to reduce her blue bar down to about 40% before the game would let me get a checkpoint. After failing to get there several times, I started regressing, and for a long time, I couldn't even get past her first health bar. Eventually, I pushed through and nabbed that first checkpoint, which swiftly led to the final checkpoint after a quick bout on some rockets. This is where some questionable things started happening. You can fight on the ground or take the battle to this wall over here, and Denim loves that wall. If she's on it while you're on the ground, apparently she can do 9 wicked weaves in a row? Listen, I'm no Bayonetta expert, but I really feel like that's not normal. Regardless, this fight was endlessly relentless, and I was stuck on this battle for about 3 hours before I finally locked in and got the win. According to the game, the total time of the successful attempt stitched together was near 11 minutes, which for something this fast-paced and action-packed is a very long time. But now, all we had left was one final ascent before the end, and the game wasn't done breaking just yet. I got to fight everyone's favorite again,
Ball.
and he was even more glitched than before. He'd do one attack that usually didn't even function properly, and then sit there menacingly, until I broke him and damaged the core a bit. Then he would reform, do another attack, and proceed to sit there again doing nothing. At some points, I swear he didn't even look like a ball anymore. After yet another incorrect finisher cutscene, I entered the elevator shaft that would carry me to the top of the tower when I noticed that the floor was missing. That's it, nothing crazy happened with it, just some missing textures. After I got stomped by the boss just above, on my run back, the textures did actually load in properly. So that's something, I guess. Baldur's dodge and parry timings were nothing compared to what I dealt with against Jean, so I made short work of him and marched my way towards Jubileus. Naturally, thanks to my damage woes, this battle was very drawn out, but once you know how to dodge her tricky attacks, like the baby blades and the one-shot suction punch, going through the motions until the scripted finish wasn't difficult at all. And that's it. All of Bayonetta, except for the last half of the motorcycle section of Route 666, beaten with the handguns only on non-stop infinite climax. This has got to be one of the most scuffed runs I have ever done, solely thanks to all the glitches that arose throughout the challenge. Regardless, it was genuinely a fun restriction that made me think a little differently about how I wanted to approach every fight, especially the virtue bosses. I hope you all enjoyed this as much as I did, and I know some of you have been wanting more Bayonetta content, so here you go. If you want me to continue pushing out more Bayonetta videos, then you should subscribe, or if you already are, tell your friends about me, leave a like and a comment. Help this video and my channel grow so I can keep providing this kind of stuff for you all. Anyway, that's all I've got for you today, so I'll catch you guys in the next one. Sayonara.